Hello, Hot Mess historians. It's me, your Hot Mess hostess, Janet, and today we're going to be talking about one of the bravest men I've ever read about. His name is Desmond Doss, and he was the recipient of the Medal of Honor. So Desmond Doss was born February 1919, and he was raised as a Seventh-day Adventist. And Seventh-day Adventists were known as pacifists. They didn't believe in combat. They didn't believe in violence and taking lives. Desmond Doss particularly adhered to the Ten Commandments, and two that he stuck true to the most and held a very strong conviction for was the fourth and sixth commandments. And the fourth commandment is to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And the sixth commandment is thou shalt not kill. Fast forward to the outbreak of World War II. Everybody's signing up for military service. Millions of men are volunteering. They're saying, sign me up. When can I leave? When can I leave? When can I leave? Now, at the time, there was also the draft was instated. The government knew that they were going to need a lot of men to fight this war. And the draft is essentially any man at the age of 18 has to go register with the draft board. And if in a time of war that there are soldiers needed, there's a lottery and they pull your name and serial number, which is social security number. And if your ticket is pulled, then you are forced to go. They don't wait for you to volunteer and say, is now a good time for you? Are you in a good place? Let's go. No, it says, we need men, let's go now. So Desmond Doss, being a pacifist, he does not go and volunteer for service. He actually has a pretty sweet gig working in the Naval Yard in Newport News, Virginia. But on April 1st, 1942, April Fool's Day, his number is pulled in the draft. His boss, knowing he's a Seventh-day Adventist and he's a pacifist, goes to him and says, look, I'll offer you deferment. We can help you get a deferment. And a deferment essentially means that if you have a job at home with the war effort in factories or munitions, things like that, you can take a deferment and say, rather than participate overseas and in combat, I'm going to stay home and help supply the needed items to our boys overseas. But Desmond says, I don't think so. I know I didn't volunteer, but I'm not going to take the deferment because I believe in serving God and country. And he believed it in that order, God, then country. And he said, I can't take a life, but I could save lives. So he signed up to be in the Army Medical Corps in order to be a combat medic. Now, as a combat medic, he knew he would not be required to carry a weapon. And that suited him just fine. Remember, thou shalt not kill. He does not want to touch a weapon at all, period. There's another term that you need to know, and that term is called Conscientious Objector. And the Conscientious Objector is something that's totally different than receiving a deferment or even being 4F, which means that you're physically unable to serve. You want to, but you have been found physically ineffective in a combat situation. And a conscientious objector means that you either have political views or religious views that conflict with military service, combat, or war, much like Desmond Doss. However, Desmond did not like that term because he's not objecting. He doesn't have anything against serving his country. He very much wants to do that. He just has an issue with taking a life. That's all. But I mean, isn't that war? Very confusing for everyone involved at this time. So rather than be termed a conscientious objector, Desmond Doss goes to the draft board and he says, look, I have absolutely no problem serving. Sign me up. I'm here voluntarily submitting to register with the draft board, but I can't carry a weapon. So what are we going to do? Because there's no classification for that. That position does not exist in the Army. And so the draft board representative says, look, we'll put you down, say that you want to do the Army Medical Corps, whatever, however it is that they do that. But he said that what he's going to do is, rather than a conscientious objector, he's going to classify him as a non-combatant. And what that meant, at least that's what Doss understood, was that it designates that he is not objecting to service in any way, shape, or form, but that he has entered into this with religious scruples. So it's been notated. Just like any recruiter would tell you, we'll give you exactly what you want, how you want it, right? And I can hear all the veterans' eyes just rolling in their head. Anyway, fast forward. Desmond Doss's draft ticket gets pulled. He gets shipped off to basic training thinking, I'm going to be a medic. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to save lives. I'm going to serve my country. Ironically, Doss finds himself in an infantry rifle company. So the draft board says, yeah, no problem. You don't have to carry a weapon. You can be a medic. We'll list religious scruples. It's all going to be documented here. No problem, no problem. Good old military. You go where you're needed, right? And he was needed in a rifle company. So he gets to boot camp, and this is not good because being in this rifle company, yeah, he has to touch a rifle, and he refuses to do so. The other recruits that he's there with begin harassing him, teasing him, throwing shoes at him while he's praying. They can't understand why he won't just pick up the rifle. You know, you're training with the man next to you because you expect that they're going to be able to be there and to help you defend and save your life. You know, you fight for one another. But if you're telling me you're not even going to pick up a weapon in your own defense, how are you going to defend me? They don't necessarily understand that, yes, he does want to save lives, but he wants to save them in the heat of battle and be that medic and that person who can render aid. That doesn't matter to them. They can't understand it. Again, Army, military, no weapons, it doesn't go together. His officers, his drill sergeants cannot comprehend what's happening. They do not want him there. Doss wants to be there. He has a firm belief in faith, God and country. He is there to honor both. He's not going to give up one for the other. And that's what they're asking him to do. So he suffers through this abuse that he receives from the other recruits, from his drill instructors, from his chain of command. So much so that they actually attempted to have him court-martialed, citing that he was refusing to obey a direct order. And that direct order, pick up a gun. He refused to touch it. Court-martial didn't work. He's still there. Throughout all of this, not only is he refusing to touch a weapon because he's abiding by that 6th commandment, he also has requested to abide the 4th commandment, and that is remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. He wants to go to church on Saturday because the Seventh-day Adventists honor the Sabbath on Saturdays, and he's requesting special passes to go to church on Saturdays. He's also requesting that he not be required to participate in any drills, training, any other exercises or work because it is his Sabbath and he believes in keeping it holy and it being a rest day. So you have this new recruit coming in saying, I'm not going to touch a weapon and I'm also not going to work on Saturdays. The other recruits don't get that, quote, special treatment, so that's where the resentment builds up. It's all compounding and compounding and compounding. Well, the court-martial doesn't work. So he graduates the basic boot camp and he gets shipped off to medic school. He thinks, this is awesome. I'm on my way. I'm going to be a medic. There's not going to be this pressure of, picking up the weapon. That's not what this is about. Fantastic. He is wrong. In this interview that I watched of Desmond, he is talking about getting to the medical corps training camp. And he was so relieved. He thought he had it made because his commanding officer was Jewish. And the Jewish faith celebrates Sabbath on Saturdays as well. This is going to be awesome. His commander said, it doesn't matter what religion you are. We're the Army. We work on Saturdays. You're going to work on Saturdays. Doss said, I don't think so. Continues to ask for passes to go to church on Saturdays. Passes are denied. He goes anyway. Finally, he goes to visit a chaplain and says, how can I do this? How can I get my pass? And the chaplain says, look, I don't know what I'm going to do for you because this is the Army. This is what you're asking for. It's not really a thing, but I'll see what I can do. So he goes to up chain of command. And ultimately a decision comes down from division, which is like way up there, that says Doss is to have his pass for church on Saturdays. So this Saturday comes about and Doss goes to his commanding officer and says, can you please sign my pass? Well, the commanding officer is nowhere to be found. He asks the clerk there at the aid station, which is where his commanding officer is usually at. He says, where is he at? And the clerk says, he's out in the field. They're doing like exercises and calisthenics. All of a sudden, Doss is like, that's very unusual. He never does that. So he says, I'm going to church. He walks out to that exercise field, right up to, I believe he said it was a lieutenant. I could be wrong about that. And hands him the pass. He says he gives him a really sharp salute and hands him the pass in front of the entire command that he has out there running drills. And because this is a decision that has come down from division, this lieutenant has no choice but to sign off on it and feels humiliated because he's got this private first class questioning his command, essentially. Well, Doss says after that, there was no problems with getting his passes signed. So, sorry about the wardrobe change. I realized in editing the footage that I had that a large portion of it somehow became corrupted or disappeared, or I don't know what happened, so I apologize. Following his training as a medic, he joins his battalion and they go across the country, across the U.S., doing various different training exercises. And Desmond affectionately calls this, they were playing pretend war at this point. But it was very, very hard on them, and it was designed to be so, to prepare them for the real rigors of war to the best of their ability. And Desmond remembers being just in frigid cold temperatures. These troops are having to march 25 miles a day in full battle rattle, all of your gear, everything. And it's during these exercises that the soldiers begin to form that bond that they will take them overseas. And Desmond continues to earn the respect of his fellow soldiers, of his peers. He is the first one to show up when one of the troops is suffering from heat stroke to give them his own canteen. He is the first one to step up and render aid as soon as possible. He does not shy away from this. And he also does not begrudge any of the treatment he received in training. He does not hold that against anyone. I mean, more humble a person you will never meet. He renders aid without any hesitation. And ultimately, when his battalion goes overseas, they see combat on Guam and on Leyte. Remember, he does not have a weapon. He is not carrying a gun. He has nothing except his medical supplies to save lives, right? There are reports that as soon as the call for a medic came out, Desmond did not hesitate. He ran directly into gunfire to get to the wounded soldiers. And there are reports that he got so close assisting wounded soldiers, he got so close to the enemy lines that he could hear consistent and constant Japanese soldiers whispering to one another. That's how close he was. Yet he's not wounded. It's amazing, but it gets even more amazing. In April 1945, there begins a campaign to invade and take the island of Okinawa. In this campaign, there is a fortified cliff or ledge or sheer just drop off known as Maide Escarpment. We all know how I am about pronunciations, and I'm really, really sorry if I butchered that. I'm trying my best. The U.S. soldiers affectionately deemed this particular ridge as Hacksaw Ridge because the level of fighting was so brutal, just devastating. And you're talking about a month-long campaign of constantly trying to take back this ridge from the Japanese. Now, the Japanese have dug tunnels in the caves of this mountain, the mountainside. So they're just coming and coming and coming and coming and coming, and so are the U.S. troops. We're going and going and going and going and going. By May 4th, we've taken the ridge, and we think everything's done. We can move on now. May 5th, we wake up to a fierce counterattack by the Japanese. They are pouring out of these tunnels and caves, just decimating our forces, and we were not expecting it. U.S. troops the U.S. commanders sound the retreat, but only a third of the fighting force is able to make it down the cliff. 2/3 of that fighting force are left stranded atop the ridge, either wounded, dying, or already dead. The only man who remained atop the ridge who was not wounded or dying was Private First Class Desmond Doss. He made the decision to ignore the order of retreat and to help save as many wounded U.S. soldiers as he could. Please bear in mind that he is by himself. He has no weapon. He has no training if he were to suddenly decide in a fight or flight moment to pick up a weapon and defend himself. He has no training on that weapon. He is the definition of defenseless in this moment. But that doesn't stop him. He runs right into the fray and starts helping wounded soldiers. He's rendering aid to the best of his ability on site, and then he is dragging them physically from where they landed to the cliff's edge. Sometimes a very great distance, and it's very, very rugged terrain. It's hostile territory. There are thousands of Japanese forces still there, going from wounded to wounded and killing the survivors. So he's having to evade them as well. And he brings them back to the ridge. Now, when he gets the soldier to the ridge, there's a 400-foot drop-off. How is he going to get him down? He can't just throw them over the side because they will die. So he fashions a sling that he remembers from his childhood. This sling was used to pull victims out of flooded areas or out of mining accidents, things like that. So he fashions this sling and he lowers them over the side of the cliff to where U.S. troops are still waiting at the bottom. There have been some that have been left there as lookouts and to make sure that the Japanese don't come down. And each time he lowers a man to safety, he stops and pauses for a moment and says a quick prayer. Dear God, let me get just one more man. And with that moment of rest, contemplation, and prayer, just long enough to utter that plea, he turns around and runs back in for another man. This goes on for several hours. By the time it's done and Desmond Doss comes off the ridge, he has saved 75 men by himself without a weapon or tool to defend himself. Unfreaking believable. Several days go by and the U.S. troops have to go back up on Hacksaw Ridge. And this is going to be a night raid. At this time, they were running very, very short of medics. And Doss's commander goes to him and says, look, we need you. The men need you. I need you. What you did was incredible. Please come with us. The only problem? The night raid is going to take place on the Sabbath. Doss says, I will go. There is no one else to go. I will go. But let me finish my personal devotional first. So they allow him to finish his prayers, and he goes with these soldiers back up on Hacksaw Ridge on the Sabbath. Now, while he is up on this ridge, there is a grenade thrown, and it falls at the feet of Desmond Doss. The shrapnel from the explosion tears up his leg all the way up to his hip, but Desmond, being Desmond, cares for himself. The other few medics that were there, he insisted that they help others. He rendered his own aid, took care of himself. And when the litter bearers, those are the people who came with the stretchers to take the wounded from where they were at to the aid station to get further medical attention, when those litter bearers came around, Desmond continuously said, don't take me, take them. Take them, take them, save them, save them. He wanted to save lives. This goes on for about 5 hours. I mean, his leg and hip are tore up, but he does not take someone else's place. Finally, time comes and he starts making his way back to the aid station, and he's hit in the arm by sniper fire. He's shot in the friggin' arm. So Desmond, being Desmond, fashions a splint, but unlike the Desmond we have come to know, he uses a rifle to splint his arm. It's the one and only time he ever touched a weapon in the war. Not in defense of himself, not in defense of others, not to take a life, but to save his arm. He used this utensil of death to save his own arm and made his way back to safety and finally was rendered aid. Now, his wounds are military career ending. He is not combat effective any longer. He cannot be of any use to anyone else. His time is done. So he makes his way back to the States. October 1945, he has surgery on his arm to have the bullet removed, and he is then taken to Washington, D.C., where President Harry Truman awards him with the Medal of Honor. And I just want to take a moment to read a portion of his Medal of Honor citation. Through his outstanding bravery and unflinching determination in the face of desperately dangerous conditions, Private Doss saved the lives of many soldiers. His name became a symbol throughout the 77th Infantry Division for outstanding gallantry far above and beyond the call of duty. Yeah, well far and beyond the call of duty. Not only was he humble and compassionate, he never held the treatment that he received in training. He never held that behavior against his fellow soldiers. He never withheld care. And then to go on and single-handedly save the lives of 75 soldiers, forego essential medical care so that others may receive assistance. I think that Desmond Doss is truly the definition of a hero and a blinding example of bravery.